This video is an introductory to Kine-FX in Houdini and is for those that have never touched Kine-FX in Houdini before. If you have played around with Kine-FX, you might want to skip to the next video, basic concept number 2 on IK controls and anchor points. In this video, I'm going to go over the super basics of Kine-FX to get you started. I'm going to demo the rig pose node and show you how it's used for character animation. So let's start by dropping down a geometry node to get started. Go into it and drop down an FBX character import node. Now this node allows us to import our 3D characters along with all the rigs that is attached to it and extracts all the information out for us into nice little outputs. So it has 3 outputs here. One for the character mesh that we're going to deform, and it has exposed out the skeletons, one for the rest skeleton and one to be animated. So in this parameter here, this is where you choose your rig. So I have mine loaded up right here. The model I'm going to be using is the Eric model that is available on sidefx's website, and you can get your own copy by going to the sidefx website, hover your mouse over this get menu, and you'll see all the submenus. The content library is what you're looking for. Now type Eric in here and it'll pop up right there. So this is the model you're looking for. Now you can download it, and what it has, now I've already downloaded this, so I'm not going to do it again. What you will get is 3 files attached to this model. These are the textures for Eric, and this is the actual 3D model for the Eric character. The textures are stored as external files, but as you probably noticed that when I loaded this FBX character up, I only specified one file, the FBX file, and it automatically detects the texture files on the same level. So these texture files has to be on the same level in the same folder as the FBX. As long as these guys are side by side in the Windows Explorer, Houdini will know how to pick it up and automatically load the textures in for Eric, and you'll get your nice little rig here. So these are just nice little labels for the inputs, so you know which one's which. And let's take a look at what it is. This is the character mesh. So this is the actual geometry that we need, that we're going to deform. Now let's make this a little larger. So this is the skeleton. This is the rig skeleton in the pose mode. So this is a T-pose mode. This is the resting position, which is sort of like the default pose. And this animation pose looks exactly like the rest pose, but this is the one that we're going to manipulate, and we're going to be using this to deform, to move our character. Now we're going to use the joint deform node. Let's hook this all up. Now you won't see anything happening right off the bat. That's because we haven't moved the character in any way. We haven't manipulated the joints in any sort of way. In order to manipulate the joints or move the character, we'll need to use a rig pose node. Now later on I will show you different ways of manipulating the character, but this is the most basic one. So you drop down a rig pose node, connect it to the animation pose, and hook it up to the last input of the joint deform. Leave the render flag on this joint deform, but we're actually going to select this rig pose node. Select it. Now the render flag is still on the joint deform, where we have the rig pose node selected. Hover the mouse over to the 3D viewport and press enter. Now you're going to see the skeleton overlaid on top of the character mesh, which is perfect because we want to see what we're actually deforming. And I'm just going to make something really simple adjustment. I'm going to take the arm and I'm just going to rotate it. And you'll see the magic happening. It will start to move the character in whatever way we deform it. So we can deform, we can rotate the elbow and move the arm. Now this is all rotations. I'm going to drop down another rig pose. Now you don't have to do this separately. I just wanted to show you the difference between the rig pose rotations and translations. I'm going to label this translations. Connect it here. I'm going to highlight the translations rig pose. Come over here, and you probably can't tell, but it's already activated. So we're modifying this second rig pose. I'm going to choose the same hand over here, but this time I'm going to translate it. So I'm not going to rotate anything. Now I'm just going to click this point here and drag it. Now this is what you're starting to see, the stretching. This is because we're taking the joint and we're moving it out of place. So we're disjointing the skeleton. The rig pose node modifies the joint bones directly, and it does so by updating the local transforms of each joint. In order to visualize the local transforms of each joint bone, we need the help of the visualize rig node. So I'm just going to drop this node down, and what it'll do is help us visualize the joint transforms. And this is purely for visual purposes. So I'm just going to color this node black because it doesn't affect any of the functionality. Now, we still don't see anything on the viewport. So here there's still isn't any changes made in the viewport. What we need to do is increase the joint scale so we can actually see it. Right now it's there, but it's super tiny. So I'm just gonna increase this and you'll start to see the dots get bigger and bigger in the viewport. And I'm gonna change this to a darker background. And let's get rid of the grid as well. So you can see here there's these little green balls. It's green just because it's inheriting the color from the skeleton, which was also green. It can be any color. So the color of the ball and the lines doesn't really matter. What really matters are these little hats or these little arrows that are RGB color. Now let's zoom into this one over here. So we can see that there's a green hat over here that's pointing upwards. There's a red hat over here pointing to the side and a blue hat pointing outwards towards where the hand is facing, pointing to. So these are the joints. Now this color coding matches the color coding on the axes over here. If only the tool tip would not get in the way. Now you can see it. So the Y is green. The blue is the Z axis and the X is the red axis. So this color coding matches this axis scheme. And this represents what the axes of each joint is. So each local joint. Now let's take a look what the local axis looks like for the rest pose. You can see that this is pointing up and the finger that we moved, let's see, the one that we moved was the shoulder. Okay, let's do that. Let's take a look at the shoulder. So the shoulder over here has the axes looking like this before we applied the rig pose. Now, after we applied the rig pose, let's connect this and take a look. Afterwards, this has changed. So you can see that this green is pointing this way now. Before, it was pointing backwards. It was pointing towards the back. After, because we had rotated this joint towards the front using the rig pose node. Now what I want you to see out of all this is that all the children bones and all the bones after the bone that we modified, for example this shoulder over here, we had rotated the shoulder, but all the children bones, that meaning all the bones over here are the children of this shoulder bone, are inheriting the rotation of this shoulder bone. Once we rotate the shoulder bone, it rotates everything, all the bones after this bone, meaning all the children. So it's sort of like a chain reaction, even if we translate it. So let's go back to that translate. Now let's ignore this rotation bone, this rotation rig pose. Let's ignore that. So we're just left with the translate rig pose. Now let's see what the translate is doing. So I'm literally taking the hand and stretching it outwards. But what I really want you to see is that even though we're just stretching the hand, all the fingers are following the hand. So the only bone that we're actually stretching or moving is this bone, but the entire hand is moving with this bone. So all the children bones after this hand bone inherits the translation as well. So that's something you need to understand out of this rig pose, the whole chain reaction. Using the rig pose node to pose the character one joint at a time is a very tedious job and requires a lot of work. In the next video, basic concept number 2, IK controls and anchor points, I'll show you a different way of posing the character using some of Houdini's IK nodes, and we'll really have fun with this. IK controls that allow you to manipulate the whole skeleton by using a single bone. So you can do 10 things with a single mouse click and drag. Houdini will do most of the heavy lifting and estimate the rest of the joints, where they should be, so you can animate with ease. Thanks for watching and sticking to the end.